start again because I got on talking about hi-fi and computers and stuff, and that's not what this is about, and I don't want you to switch off. However, it was listening to Mumford & Sons that got me on to what I'm going to talk about, because I then read up about them and realised that the lyrics that I was wondering about are actually Shakespeare quotes. And now I don't quite know how to explain this, but I'm going to do my best. Because the way I handled all the shit that happened to me when I was a child was to shut down emotionally, it obviously greatly affected my life, gave me all sorts of weird disorders in the sense of obsessive compulsive disorder. I mean, I used to starve myself, I used to constantly clean myself, not not the good sort of cleaning. I'm no good at that, never have been. And so I hire somebody who has OCD for cleaning, because they're really good, I tell you. If you need a cleaner, make sure they have OCD. And I'm not being mean, they are really good, and they enjoy their job. That's the really important thing. And you can just leave them to it, because you don't have to tell them anything, because they know. And they know about what you don't know about. I mean, they clean things that you wouldn't in a million years think of cleaning, unless of course you've got OCD. Anyway, so of course none of that was funny. I lived through it, and I can assure you it wasn't funny. But I was emotionally dead. So what the hell's this got to do with Shakespeare? Well, a lot to do with it, because I never understood Shakespeare. I found Shakespeare incredibly boring. I had no clue what he was on about, and you might as well have been speaking Chinese. Seriously, it was a completely foreign language to me. Even seeing a film of Shakespeare made no sense unless it was spoken in modern English. And even then it didn't really make any sense, because I thought, well, what are you so upset about? Now, I don't need to have it translated. I understand it. And I'm sure that the only difference being is because I now feel. I'm now in touch with myself. You know, one of the things when I think back that arrogant people just really compounded the damage that had already been done to me. When I started going to self-help groups, and I was always a sucker for those people who basically were control freaks, but came across sort of paternalistic or maternalistic. And I was very easily taken in by those people, really easily. And one of the things that they used to do was, well, constantly tell me I wasn't good enough, really, and criticise me, and, you know, some even would throw their hands up in disgust and walk away and blame me. And it was basically because, as much of an expert as they believed they were, they did not have a clue when it came to me. Because I showed no emotion, for one thing, but I also did not understand what they were talking about. One of the most, I mean, I can't go into detail because it's all slowly changed, and so I find it really difficult to get this across, but I remember once when I was clearly extremely depressed and very ill, somebody just sort of saying to me, you know, you really give nothing at all. And I'm thinking, all I took that was a criticism, and I never went near them again. And they didn't have a fucking clue. If they were so in tune, and they were sort of a pot-smoking hippie. And, I mean, not that I'm criticising that, because that's me. Well, I don't pot smoke anymore, but... and so all those kind people who keep thinking that that would do my disease good, that's how I got into it in the first place, and it didn't. Well, it did at first. but then it didn't, and it caused all sorts of problems. And as usual, I've digressed. Anyway, I didn't have a clue what that stupid cow was on about, not at all. And you know, and it was just another nail in the coffin for me. You know, it just made me feel even more worthless. And people used to go on, well, one particular person would talk about boundaries. Pardon? Boundaries? I understand what offence is. I understand what a border is. But a boundary? What the fuck's a boundary? What do you mean I don't know boundaries? And of course not only did I have no boundaries as regards myself, which is why I was so easily abused, but unfortunately I also did not understand other people had boundaries, or what those boundaries might be. This wasn't just because my body was not my own when I was a child. It's not because it was invaded constantly. But I also had no privacy. I mean, even when I had a bedroom of my own, or, you know, I could be on the toilet, in the bath, whatever. And my parents took absolutely no notice of that. So what? I can go where I like, meaning them. You know, no privacy whatsoever. And it seemed like it didn't exist in our house, except for when it came to them, of course. And there were lots of secrets. To this day, I don't know what about, but anyway. So, you know, in a lot of ways, I wrote on my blog earlier today that the end of 2007, this time 4 years ago, I really came alive for the first time ever. And I'd be lying if I said it doesn't make me feel a bit bitter. Even though I know that, I mean, I have a really good life in comparison to millions and millions, in fact, maybe billions of other people. I have an excellent life. You know, and I'm very grateful for John and for my dogs and for my home, and, you know, just that I'm not in that anguish anymore. But imagine sort of coming alive at the age of 48. Imagine being an 18-year-old and just not being able to do what 18-year-olds do. And, I mean, it really was awful. And I was just so confused and didn't have a clue. And anyhow, one of the other things I've also come to realise that I've really been led up the garden path as regards men and how men feel, or rather don't feel. I mean, certainly for myself, I was always very sensitive and always made to feel really ashamed of it. Not just by my parents, I mean particularly by my father, who was absolutely disgusted by it, but also at school. And, you know, I was always told, you're far too sensitive and you're a big sissy. And, you know, because I'd cry at Bambi and stuff like that. And also because throughout my life most of my friends have been women, I've also got this attitude that, you know, all men are repressed, shut down fools who are just waiting to explode and murder you. And I now know that's not true. And how do I know that? Well, much to my surprise, and this is a real surprise to me, I've got into male singers recently. Yeah. Mumford & Sons, Leonard Cohen. How have I never heard of Leonard Cohen before? Well, I have heard of him, but I'd never heard his music, and I've now bought all 11 albums of his, all 11 studio albums. I don't really go for live stuff. Anyway, him and Mumford & Sons and Noah and the Whale and James Blunt. Now, don't tell me they don't feel. They're all men, and they feel, and it's so obvious that they do. And I've really been led up the garden path about that. You know, I came to realise, because my therapist taught me, that just because John is different to me and he handles his emotions differently to me doesn't mean he's a repressed serial killer or something. You know, that's just the way he is. Generally speaking, a lot of men, if not most, just deal with their emotions in a completely different way. Whereas I will emote, John will go into his cave and be quiet and come out again when he's ready. Not me, as you've probably gathered. You know, once I started to feel, my God, you certainly know that I do. You know, I sort of emote all over the place. But, you know, it's good because I feel a lot of good things too. And I've stopped being ashamed of feeling sensitive. And I've stopped doing things. I've stopped trying to convince myself that I ought not to be. Like, for instance, that TV series, The Tudors, which is incredibly well acted and very well made, but I had to stop watching it because it is far too graphic when it comes to torture and executions. Why they have to show these things, I don't know. Why they can't just hint at it or, you know, show you in words what's going to happen and then just don't show it. Because those images are now burned in my memory and, well, I mean, it's bad enough when I read about it. I read Labyrinth by Kate Moss and, you know, she talks about the Cathars being burned at the stakes and she's quite graphic in her verbal description, you know, and I still remember that scene vividly, and it horrifies me. It really does. Anyway, I've stopped watching all sorts of things, and I, you know, if they're graphic, no, things like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon and that, I don't mind those, or Terminator, because they're funny, and the violence isn't real. You know, and I used to like watching, you know, oh, what shall I do with my children? That was a film with Anne Margaret where she had 10 children and a drunk husband, and she got diagnosed with terminal cancer, and she knew that her drunk husband wasn't going to be able to look after her 10 children, so she found homes for them all before she died. Oh, I mean, I just don't watch stuff like that anymore because I can't deal with it. So I don't, and that's okay. So anyhow, but I think the thing about Shakespeare is really quite interesting. That's why I couldn't understand. Not because I couldn't understand English language, but I had no clue what he was going on about because I didn't understand the emotions. And I do now. That's it, really. I don't know if this is going to show or once I've stopped talking, but this camera looks to me like it keeps going in and out of focus. I hope it doesn't show, because otherwise I'll have to redo it. Anyway, so, you know, you people out there who are either just interested in the effects that abuse has or who are wondering, I don't think this is me, this must be the camera. Oh, I don't know, it could be me. No, I don't think so. I hope it's not, anyway. Or, you know, who are in the process of digging themselves out of this pit that you find yourself in when you've experienced abuse growing up. There is always hope, no matter how badly you may feel and how much you may think that there isn't and how much you think that you're not understood or that no one will ever understand you or that you'll never understand yourself. Just don't give in. Never ever give in. And those of you who care about somebody who you know has been through this, stop judging them, because you have absolutely no idea what it is to walk in our shoes. None at all. That doesn't mean you have to accept the unacceptable, and not at all. But perhaps it means that, you know, you're a bit give them more allowances, because they're not on the full ticket. It's as simple as that. We're not. And all right, I know some of you may well object to that, some of you other survivors, but, you know, I'm not ashamed to say that I was incredibly disturbed, and I certainly was not the full ticket. Maybe I'm not now. The difference is I'm happy. So anyway, I'm hoping not to have to do this again.